Okay, first we have to clean the brows. You have to groom them. If you don't groom your brows, then when you try to fill them in, they're going to be too large because you're going to be filling in over the hair that is not supposed to be there. So we're going to go ahead and groom the brows. You can get them waxed. You can groom them yourself. I'm going to use a razor for her. So choose whatever you want to do, but groom them first. Arch them first. Unless you have no brows, then that's another tutorial. Now we are going to start priming. I am going to prime her skin with the Fenty Pro Filter Instant Retouch Primer. It's not the hydrating one. It's not the mattifying one. It's the original Instant Retouch. I feel like this one is good for all skin types. All skin types. So she has combination skin. So we're going to go ahead and prime her with this one. And 2 pumps is all you need. I like to go in either with my hand or a fluffy brush. And you want to push it into the skin to kind of fill them. If you're working on yourself, you can absolutely use your hands. And you want to push in, especially in the T-zone areas where you would get oily. And wherever you see like open pores, down the nose, especially over the lips, on the chin area. And this gives a nice flat base to work with, and it creates a barrier between your makeup and your skin. I'm big on priming, so because I'm big on long-lasting makeup. So this is our first step in priming. Our next priming step is going to be under the eyes, where we crease the most, and on the eyelids. I also prime in any laugh lines, forehead lines. For this, I have a little trick. I use the Urban Decay eyeshadow primer. It's supposed to be, you know, to keep your eyeshadow longer, but it also prevents creasing. Look up. Whenever you're working under your eye, you always want to look up to stretch that skin and get right into the creases. We're pushing this right into her creases. Close your eye, and we put a little on the lid, up to the brow bone. Smile. Laugh lines, I put a little here to prevent creasing in the laugh lines. So under the eye, on the lid, any lines. If you have any forehead lines, you'll put a little in there. Anywhere you feel like you crease the most. And that's the Urban Decay eyeshadow primer. And for my last priming trick, this is a paint pot by MAC. It's called, I'm using Groundwork. Groundwork is the actual color. The product is paint pot and the color is Groundwork. This is also an eyeshadow base. Because it has a tinted color to it, I use it as a corrector as well. And the reason why this product is so good to me, look up, is because not only does it prevent creasing, the tint to it actually blocks out any hyperpigmentation or dark circles or darkness, while giving that extra protection against creasing. And you can see here how it instantly brightened up the under eye. I'm going to use some of this around the mouth, where makeup loves to break up. And a little of this goes a long way. I'm using a fluffy brush. This is a Sedona lace E313. The brush that I used to put the Fenty on was a Morphe E8. Just a fluffy brush. You can also use a flat brush for that, or your hands. And of course on the lid. And this helps the eyeshadow to stick and be super pigmented. Okay, and that's MAC Paint Pot. The color we use for her is Groundwork. If you have a lighter skin tone, you may want to use Soft Ochre or Painterly. Okay, so now we are going to correct a little bit of scarring or other hyperpigmentation, darkness. I'm using an orange corrector by LA Girl. I don't believe in putting too much of this. We just put it in a couple of areas where we feel like it'll stand out under the foundation, and just kind of to block it out. So as you see, my sponge is damp. This is a Real Technique sponge, and it's damp. It's not wet, it's damp. When you don't correct these areas with something warm, when you put on your foundation, it will look gray in these areas that are darker. Normally, especially women of color, we have darkness around our mouths. If you don't think you do, get under a LED light and you can find it. And that's it. We don't really need it too many other places because we're going to be using Balm foundation, and we're going to be using. Now we're going to go with our base foundation. I'm going to be using Makeup Forever Ultra HD, and the color I'm using for her skin tone is R530. And it's kind of like a warm tone for deeper skin. I apply with the brush. The brush I'm using is the Morphe M439. It's the perfect foundation brush. I have a little on the back of my hand. I always start at the jaw area because you want to make sure the foundation matches the neck. So if you're matching for foundation, do not match up here. Don't match the back of your hand. Always match on the jawline so you can see how it blends in with your face as well as your neck. And I start pushing this in to her skin. I don't want to swipe because I don't want to disturb any of the primer under there, and I don't want any streaks. I just start pushing it in. I'm using a very light hand. I'm not pushing in too hard because that will also leave streaks. If you push the brush in too hard, it'll leave streaks from the brush. And I'm just tapping. Let the brush do the work. You can swipe a little under the chin just to kind of blend it out, but once you get back up to the face, make sure you go under the chin. Please go under your chin. If you feel like you need to go a little bit down your neck, you can do that as well. You don't want to see a line of demarcation right at your chin line. So please carry that, the rest of what you have under your chin. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. Foundation is very important because it's your base. It's extremely important, as well as the primers. That's what's going to give the look, start your look. You want to make sure you start with quality products, and quality doesn't necessarily mean high end, but you want products that photograph well. Some of the foundations that I like: high end, NARS, Makeup Forever, Fenty. Lower end, Black Opal, look up for me, JUVIA'S Place. I try to stay away from foundations that have SPF in it. I know that is not something you guys like to hear, but I feel that the SPF gives a flashback. And I feel like your skin is protected anyway, since you have in the primers and you have powder and everything. I don't think the sun is touching your skin. So I'll turn a little so you can see the coverage. And I just take the sponge, Real Technique sponge damp, and I just tap it over the parts that I already did just to kind of get it blended in, get it in her skin, and remove excess product. So now that her entire face is covered, I'm going to take the sponge, I'm not adding any product, and I'm going to go over her lids. Tap real lightly. Just to give a base for our shadows and everything. Just tapping real lightly. Not adding any more product. Just to make sure everything is blended out properly. Now we're going to move into the highlighting stage. I don't necessarily like to use concealers to highlight. I like to use a lighter foundation. Today we're using MOCHA, the NARS foundation in MOCHA. Whatever foundation you're using, you can just use the lighter, a shade or two lighter for this. The reason why I like to use foundations is because I like to prevent caking. I don't like makeup that's too heavy, and I don't like it to cake up. I find that some concealers cake up a lot. Some liquid concealers are really good, but I like to use a lighter foundation. The areas that I put this in, look up for me. So we're gonna do under the eye, of course. And we're going to get right up against the nose. I don't go all the way up to the lash line because when you blend, it automatically blends up there. And right at the tip of her nose is where I stop. Right there. I am going to pull in a little closer for you guys to see where I stop. I don't go past the brow. If her face was a little more narrow, I would probably go a little further. But right now I am highlighting according to her face shape. Her face is not really narrow, it's not really round, it's kind of medium, you know, in the middle, average. So I don't go past her brow and I don't bring it past her nose on the bottom. So right now I'm using the clean side of the sponge and I am blending out the edges first of the highlight. Use a light hand with the sponge. If you tap too hard, you will be removing the product. And remember, it's a sponge. So it's made to hold product in. Once you get the edges blended out where you don't see any lines, then you can kind of tap over the product a little bit to push it into the skin. But I like to make sure those edges are blended out completely. Look up for me. And then you go over the product. Very light hand. I know we call it beat in the face, but you don't want to literally beat the face. Then I take the side with her foundation. I don't add any more. And I go over the edges as well, just to kind of blend it out. So you don't see any harsh lines. We don't want to see any lines of demarcation. Look directly into the camera. So now this side is highlighted, this side is not. And even with the highlight, you can see where your contour would need to be. That will be our next step, is the contour. Our contour is simply putting the shadow back in the face where they already are. Same with highlight, we're just putting light back where the light would normally hit. Think color by numbers. 1 would be your highlight color, 2 would be your regular all over color, and 3 would be your contour darker colors. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to finish our highlighting. Same product, same NARS long wear radiant foundation in Macau. And we are going to do our regular highlight areas. Like I said, we highlight the areas that the light would normally hit. I'm going to do her forehead. And when you're highlighting on the forehead, if you want to minimize your forehead, you highlight low. If you want to give yourself more forehead, then you highlight closer to the hairline. And you do this arch to arch in the brow. When I say arch to arch, I mean in the brow. Down the nose, simple line down the middle of the nose. And on the chin area, a little here where the light would hit normally. And then you just start blending those areas out. Same concept, clean side of the sponge. You want to blend the edges out first. If you are not big on using sponges, you can also use a super fluffy brush. Both are the same way. You use a light hand. Light hand, and always go for the edges first, because you want to blend the edges out. You don't want lines of demarcation. Blending, when you hear blending, it's not just pushing product in. Blending is getting rid of the lines so you don't know where you started and don't know where you finished. And then we go ahead over the actual product. A very light hand I'm using. Down the middle of the nose. Blend that color out. Over the chin. In this step right here, I like to go back with my foundation brush. I don't add any more product. There's already a little foundation on it. And remember, this is the Morphe M439. And I very lightly go over the edges. And when I say the edges, I mean where the regular foundation and the highlight meet. You want to go in between that line and kind of just blend that out a little bit, just to ensure that you don't have any lines of demarcation. I don't want to see where I put this stuff. I want it to look as natural as it possibly can. Now we're ready to contour. I like to use Black Opal's foundation sticks. The color I'm using for her is going to be ebony brown. The brush that I'm using is a Morphe M335. It's kind of like short, stubby, really stiff, but it's really good for blending. Whenever you want to contour, always start the top of your ear here, and you can literally just kind of put the brush and see where you need to go towards the mouth. Never blend down. You always want to blend up, always. If you blend down, it'll look like you have a 5 o'clock shadow. So we're gonna go ahead and start at the top of the ear, turn again. Start right here. Very lightly, I'm making a line towards her mouth. Very lightly towards her mouth. So not at her mouth, towards her mouth. That's what that line needs to be. I'm also going to take this into the temple area, push it into the hairline just a little bit. This is all the areas where it would be naturally dark. I call it the outer three. So it's here, right here, and right here. The outer three. That would be your contour color, which would be considered number 3. Like I said, color by numbers, 1, 2, 3. And a little right here. I don't like this line to be too dark, so I just do a little right here. And this kind of gives the shadow, snatches the face, gives us just that shadow that we see there already. Turn back into the camera. This, we also take down the edge of the nose. I kind of like to blend it out a lot. I'm using Morphe E47 to contour the nose. It's really easy to contour the nose to me because it's already in a straight line. A little bit of that ebony brown from Black Opal, and I'll blend it out a lot on my skin because I don't want a harsh line in the middle of her face, even though I'm going to blend it out. And I start right under the brow here, and I take that line that starts at the top and I go straight down her nose. Our noses naturally go round. I want to take it straight down to the end, and this is definitely your preference. You do not have to contour your nose. I like to, so. There we go. So that's just applying it. We have not blended anything or anything. That's just applying it. Now I'm going to blend out the contour cream, and I'm using a fluffy brush. This is just a Real Techniques brush. It says setting brush, but because it's light and fluffy and small and it has like a little contour tip, I'm going to get right in there and lightly start blending. So with a very light hand, you want to do small circles and make sure your circles, you're headed up. Do not blend down this way. You want your circles to kind of go upward. Very light hand. I cannot stress that enough. That is the key to blending. Use a light hand. Fluffy brush, light hand. And it just blends her contour out. You can use a sponge, but for me, it's easier to control with a smaller tapered brush. And I'm going to go across her hairline, turn to the front. Very light hand I'm using, and I'm pushing it into her hairline a little because I also don't want to see that line of demarcation. So it's light hand, circular motion. Light hand, circular motion. Same on the chin. The chin contour, the jawline contour is completely optional. If you feel like that's a little too advanced for you, you can totally leave that step out. It's definitely not necessary. It's just a little trick we do to put the shadow back under the chin and make the face look a little smaller. And then when I get to the side of her nose, I'm going to pinch this brush here, and I'm just going to go up and down. This, I'm putting a little pressure because I want to get rid of this line as much as possible. Now, to kind of blend the two, like I said, we're going to think color by numbers. So the highlight would be color number 1, and the contour would be color number 3. We're going to use the foundation color. I didn't add any more to the brush, and we're just going to go in between our contour and highlight to blend it out. Blend it out just a little bit more. So it would be 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 2 is always your all over color. 2 is the color that, you know, if you just want to throw on some foundation and run out the door, you would use number 2 only. That is your actual face color. And we just go in between the highlight and the contours to kind of blend out these lines that we see. We don't want to see any lines. We want everything super natural. And this is a light hand. I'm not pushing in. I don't want to add product. I just want to blend out what's there. I don't want to add any product. Side to side. Now we're going to set. We're going to do our first step in setting. I am using the Mercier translucent powder. You can also use RCMA no color powder. That one is a really good one as well, and it's a lower price, around $12 mark. You can order that online. So right now I am blending out her under eye, if it may have crease at all. And you always want to blend it out and get it really flat, because whatever you set with the powder stays. This is the step that they call baking. I'm not going to bake her too long because she's not too oily. She doesn't get too oily. So I'm not going to leave it on there for too long. But I do want to set the areas that would normally crease. The point of setting with a translucent powder is not to make it lighter. It is to pull the oils out of the makeup to help the makeup last longer. I'm going to put this smile. I'm going to put this in her laugh lines where she would crease. I'm going to put this down the middle of her nose where she may get oily. And I'm going to put this on her forehead. I'm using a sponge, a little wedge sponge. These are the Alcone sponges. You can use one from the beauty supply store. I like to use these. And I go a little over the lip. That's another place where makeup tends to break up. I'm not leaving this on her face for too long because I don't want it to bake for too long, because she's not super oily, but she can get oily in those areas. Okay, now I'm going to take a fluffy brush. This is the Morphe M510, the Morphe M510, and it doesn't have anything on it. And I'm just going to kind of brush away that excess powder, the excess Laura Mercier setting powder. This is usually, look up for me, this is usually where people kind of give up, like, okay, I'm ashy. And I'm just going to leave it alone. But this is how it's supposed to look. Now I'm going to go in with her tinted powders to set her face. So the highlight areas, I'm using Dark Deep. Dark Deep is a mineralized skin finish by MAC. The color is Dark Deep. I'm going to use this in her highlight areas because it has minerals in it. It kind of gives a little shine. So it highlights. And this is good for her skin tone. Look up for me. And you guys are going to also see that to brighten it up just a little bit, I go in with a dark tan. Same product, the mineralized skin finish from MAC. You can also use the mineralized compact powder from Sephora. They don't have the same exact colors, so you can kind of see what color works. And I'm pushing this in. This brush that I'm using is from Japonesque. It does not have a description. As long as you have a brush that's really stiff, you can do this step. You can even do this step with a wedge sponge because you are pushing the product in. You don't want to swipe because you don't want to move anything. And we're doing this in all her highlight areas. So that's under her eyes in that upside down triangle. That's her forehead arch to arch where we put that highlight color. And we are pushing that in. The powders also help to give a flat appearance in pictures. So it kind of takes away any acne, scarring and things like that in pictures. Makes it look really flat and flawless. Make sure you get around the nose, down the middle of the nose. You can use a smaller brush for this. I know how to use this one, so I'll use this one. But down the middle of the nose, and you want to push it in, set it, push it in, and a little over the lip, right under the nose. Now, I'm going to kind of set the rest of her face as well as the contour. I don't feel like I need to put more color on her contour because she's already has a deep skin tone and her contour is already kind of prominent. So the cream did really good. I'm actually going to set her face with bronzer. This is the Fenty Mocha Mami. Really good color. And I'm going to start in the contour areas. And the brush that I'm using is the Morphe M106. Very fluffy brush. You can also use this brush for blush. And I'm just lightly setting. Lightly setting. Again, this is not all over powder. This is a bronzer. But I love the color of this for the skin tone look. It just blends everything together. And you're setting the other areas. You're not setting the highlight areas, but all the other areas. And I like to go in light circles so I could kind of get everywhere. And you're just blending, blending. And when I say blending, you're going to start here. I started here because there was nothing, there was no powder here at all. And I kind of pushed that in. When I got to the contour, I used a really light hand because I didn't want to move any of that product around. And I get even a lighter hand when I get close to the highlight. Remember, anytime you're using a light hand, it blends. Turn to me. A little of this bronzer goes a long way, so I don't even have to pick up too much of it. Any cream or liquid you apply to your face, you always want to set with some type of powder. That's what keeps your makeup. That's what stops the oils from coming through. That's what kind of flattens it. It will move around, even if it claims to mattify. The foundation claims to mattify. You still want to powder it, and that's where the mineralized skin finish and softer powders will come in really good. If you feel like you need more coverage or you're super oily, you can also use the MAC Studio Fix powders for this step instead of the mineralized skin finish and the bronzers. I'm going to go in and highlight her just a tiny bit more. And this is mineralized skin finish in dark tan. And look up for me. I'm only going in the corners here. Only. And that just gives the face a more awake look. I'm not taking it all the way out. I just want to go in the corners right here, closest to the nose. And then I blend that out. Of course, that step is optional. Side to side. Now we are going to start on brows. I use a Sedona Lace 516 brush. It's an angled brush, small angled brush. And the product that I'm using is Anastasia Beverly Hills Dip Brow Pomade in the color Ebony. I'm using Ebony because her hair is black, her brows are black. Ebony is black, but it's not like, to me, it's more like a chocolate brown. So that's the color we're going to use. I have this thing, is a regular puff from like the beauty supply store or a costume store. And basically I use it to make sure that the oils from my hand don't disturb any of her makeup. This is a little mascara wand. We call it a smoothie. We're going to brush the brows out. And I always start at the top, right at the arch, always, to fill in. You want to have your brush kind of leaning down. You don't want to go in like this, like a pencil, because it'll spread everywhere. So you want to lay it against the skin. And you pretty much you're using your brush almost like a pencil. A pencil is really good for this step as well. I like to use the Dip Brow Pomade because it lasts all day. And if you're a makeup artist, it's more sanitary to me to use. As I get towards the beginning, if you notice, I kind of just hit the bottom. As I get to the beginning, I use a super light hand and I don't use any product because I don't want her to have a harsh brow in the beginning. Super light hand, and you're just going in the direction of the hair. Going in the direction of the hair. And make sure you line it up properly on the bottom. If you do this step good, you don't need to do much to the brow after. You spoolie just a little bit in the beginning. And you're pretty much done with your brow. Always bring it to a tip right here. If you feel like you need to clean up a little bit, we're going to do that step after. I only clean up under the brow. I do not clean up over the brow. Now we're going on to blush. For her skin tone, I like to use these kind of orange corally blushes. This is a MAC blush in the color Devil. And it has a little shimmer to it. It's not completely matte, but it's not completely shimmer. I like these because they kind of give a natural flush to the cheeks. The brush that I'm using has no name, but like I said, you can totally use a Morphe M106 for this step. This brush I just had a really long time and it doesn't have a name, but it's kind of tapered. You know, you want it to be fluffy. Little bit tap. I start really light with a light hand because you can always add, but you cannot take away. And we start right where the nose is. We go to the cheek area. We don't start up here, right here. And I start in a little circle until I start seeing a little color. Then I kind of brush it up towards the hairline. I always tap off the powder. I don't want to give her like too much. And then, so it just gives a natural flush to the cheeks. Turn towards me. Start at the nose, go right to the cheek. Tip of the nose, right to the cheek. And then whatever's left, you kind of bring it up there. We're not going too far up and we're not going too far down. I take the brush that I did her all over color with, her blending color, and I just go around the edges of that blush to soften it so it doesn't look like we just placed blush on her face, and just soften it. I always like to blend every time I add any color to the face. I like to blend it out. Now we're going to start on the eyes. I'm going to do a really super simple look today, something you can do every day. You can intensify it if you want to, just change it by changing the colors up, but it's going to be almost the same as the face. 1, 2, 3. Your crease color is going to be your number 2, which is going to be the color that kind of blends your shimmery color and your outer V together. So I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm using the Juvia's Place Warrior 2 palette. The color that I'm using for her skin tone as a transition color is KUFURU, and I'm using a Morphe M518 fluffy brush for this step. So you get some. I always tap the product off, and you want to start right in the crease. You find your crease by seeing right above your eyeball. You can kind of press in and see. Some people have a more prominent crease. And windshield wiper motions. You always start at the outside of the crease, the outside of the eye, and you want to work your way in towards your contour on your nose. And windshield wiper motions. Right in the crease. Very light hand. You can always add color, but you cannot take away. And I'm just going to zoom in a little for you guys. Windshield wiper motions into the contour on the nose. Anytime you add color, you always start back out here because you don't want any concentrated color here or in the middle. You want the outside of the eye to be the darkest. Windshield wiper motions. And if you were just going to work or something, you can totally throw on a lash or some mascara and you're done. But we're going to go a little bit more. So now that our transition color is down, I'm going to go in with, this is my MAC 217. My MAC 217 is one of those kind of universal brushes. Everyone knows about it. It's the best blending brush for your eyes. And you can even kind of go down the side of your nose and stuff like that. I'm using another Juvia's Place palette. I love Juvia's Place because the shadows are really pigmented and creamy. They do not have a lot of fallout, if any at all, and they're inexpensive. The color that I'm going to be using for her outer V color, which is this part right here, is called Kenya. So it's kind of like a deep purplish brown. And I literally, is a little bit of a smaller blending brush. And I'm literally doing a V, outer V. So a little bit right under where the crease color was, on top of the lid, in a V shape. Every time you add more product, you want to go back to the bottom. And this part right here, like I said, you want it to be the darkest. If you want a more smoky eye, you would do a darker matte color. Your crease color and your outer V color absolutely must be matte. You do not want to put a shimmery color in these areas. It will give the opposite effect of what you're trying to do. Turn outer V here. This is the area you want to be in right here. So I'm leaving that lid space open. I'm kind of blending a little bit under the transition color, but not on it. Now we're going to go to the actual mobile lid color, which is the part that right now doesn't have anything on it. And I'm going to use another JUVIA'S palette, the Saharan palette. And the color I'm using is ZOYA. And it's a shimmery color. This is the only place on your lid that you would put a shimmery color. Sometimes you can put it in the brow bone. I don't suggest putting shimmery color in the brow bone unless you have a matte color on the lid. If you don't use a shimmery color on this part of the lid, you can use a lighter matte color, but it would have to be lighter than your transition color. And I'm just kind of pressing this in. I don't want it too pigmented because I am trying to do a neutral look. If I swipe it, it gets really pigmented. So I just want to kind of press it in. And because her lids are kind of like monolids, it's not too much lid space. You don't want to take this color all the way up. But you do kind of want to give her a little bit of a crease with the shimmer. This is definitely the hardest eye shape to work with. I get a lot of questions about monolids. And you know, where you have to find the crease. Now I'm going to blend that out. This is a SEDONA EB09 brush. There's no product on here. I'm just going in between her outer V color and the shimmer color. And I'm just blending the edges out because I don't want any harsh lines. I'm making sure not to blend it too far out because I don't want any color, any shimmer color out here. Now to highlight the brow bone, we are going to use MAC's Mineralized Skin Finish in dark. This is a regular face powder. It just has a little tiny bit of shimmer to it, but it's not completely matte. And I just want to set that concealer that was under the brow bone, that was on the brow bone. So it's lighter than the color that I used on her under eye. And I'm just pressing that in, press it in, press it in. And like I said, you're pressing in just to set the brow bone. You're going to use your crease brush to blend between the two colors so you won't see a line. Our next step for the eyes will be eyeliner. So for the eyeliner, I'm using a gel liner. You can use a liquid one if you're comfortable. I'm using a gel liner. This is the INGLOT 77 gel liner. And the brush that I'm using is a Morphe M160-1/8. It's a little angled brush. And I kind of just make sure I flatten it by pushing the product. And I start on the inner corner of her lid. And I don't go too far up because I don't want her eyes to disappear. But I just make a simple line first. And I just kind of fill it in. I pull the lid up just a little bit so you can actually see her lid. and you just fill it in. And this also helps with hiding the lash band. And you can use whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you feel like you can make a straight line with. I'm using an angle brush and gel liner. I feel like that works best for me. Turn so they can see it a little. Look straight ahead. Now we're just going to throw a little mascara on. I'm using the Sensational by Maybelline with a mascara, a disposable mascara wand. These are really useful if you're a makeup artist. Look straight ahead. And I'm just putting a little on because the powder and stuff got on the lashes. You don't have to put too much since we're putting lashes. And you just kind of swipe back and forth. Not too much. I'm kind of pushing it in on her eyelid to make her lashes pop up so I can get a better view of them. Now we're going to go ahead and put on some lashes. These are some 3D mink lashes that we're using. Yeah. I'm using a dark glue, lash glue. You can also use a clear lash glue that goes on white, but it dries clear if you're just beginning. When you put the glue on, you are putting the glue right on the band. Very little goes a long way, especially if you're using the dark glue. And you want to let it dry a little. I'm letting it dry a little, and they say 30 seconds. I try to go at least a minute. The tackier the glue, the easier it is to apply. While those are drying, I'm going to go ahead and line her lower lash line. So I'm going to use a lighter liner because I want to make her eyes look more open. This is the NYX Wonder Brow Pencil, and the color is medium. WP02 medium. Anytime you put a lighter liner, it opens up the eye. And as you can see, I'm using the brush to kind of pull her lid down because I don't want the oils from my finger again. You can also use a brush that doesn't have anything on it. I'm just using the brush that I used for her actual highlight color. So we want to darken it just a little. Make it as pigmented as you can. If your eyes start to water, you inhale 3 times. That's a little trick that I learned. Do a deep breath 3 times, and it either slow it down or stop it completely. Our lashes should be dry enough now. So I'm using a tweezer, and you ask your client to look down, or you look down. Don't close your eye, you just look down. And you don't want to close your eye because you don't want the glue to get on the bottom as you're placing them. I pulled the lid up just a little bit to make sure I get right at the base of the lash. And I stick the middle on first. And this is where it's really important to have it tacky a little bit, because once you stick it, you don't want it to slide. Then the inner corner, then the outer corner. And that's it. Look up. Make sure nothing is stuck. And that's it. Your lash is on. Turn a little so they can see the lash. Now I'm going to go over the lash band with some liner, some of that gel liner. So I just use the same gel liner with the same brush and kind of cover the lash band. I'm kind of big on that. I hate when the lash band just doesn't have any product on it. I feel like it doesn't give a complete finished look. Look up. So now I'm going to put a little shadow under the eye to kind of smoke out the bottom lash line. And I'm just going in with the crease color right here. I'm using that same Juvia's Place Warrior 2 palette in KUFURU. And the brush that I'm using is the Morphe M210. It's a really small shadow brush. Look up for me. And I'm going right under the lash line with this. And not too much, but it gives a finished look to your makeup. And I'm even going to go in with like a little bit of a darker color to deepen that. Whatever color I used on the outer V. I'm going to go back in with the Nubian 2 palette in Kenya. And this is a small, really this is a lip brush. It's the Morphe M412. M421. So you could use it as a lip brush or concealer brush, but I'm using it because I want to get right at the base of the lash line with this darker color. I don't want to spread this out like I did the other color. And like I said, this is more of a subtle, neutral, everyday, nothing too crazy. I'm gonna go ahead and touch up her powder under her eyes. Look up. I'm not adding anything to the brush. I'm just covering anything that may have fallen out. Flatten everything back out. I'm not adding anything to the brush. I'm going to put a little mascara on her bottom lashes. Just a little. Look up for me. So just back and forth. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to. But I feel like it kind of intensifies the bottom lashes a little. But this part right here is optional, of course. Now we're going to give a little glow, little cheekbone highlight, and I'm going to be using MAC Perfectly Poised Mineralized Skin Finish. I'm not sure if this is discontinued, but it's kind of like a golden shade here. I use a fan brush. The brush that I'm using is the Morphe R12. And you lay this right on the cheekbone and you swipe really lightly towards the lips. Really lightly. Once you get a lot of shimmer on, it's hard to get it off, so I always start light. And you want it to blend out. You don't want it to look like a streak. And I bring it around just a little on the cheeks, whatever's left on the brush, not too much. Turn to the other side. Lay it down, and you just swipe real lightly. A little bit towards the cheeks. I like to put a little of this just above the brow, whatever's left on the brush, not too much, over the lip. I'm not adding anything, just whatever's on the brush. You can completely, totally highlight to death. That is your option. You can add more shimmer. I like subtle shimmer just for this look. If we were going for more full glam, I would add more. Now we're gonna start on lips. I'm using her NYX lip liner in dark brown just to line her lips. Super neutral, we're going with the lips. And we're just gonna do a regular lining of the lips. We're not creating a new lip or anything crazy. Another really good color is Jordana Coco Loco. That's another kind of neutral, universal, goes for all skin tones. This one I want her liner to be really prominent, so that's why I went with the dark brown. And if you see with the liner, as I'm going, I'm kind of filling in just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. Because I don't want it to be like, even though I'm lining the lips, I don't want it to be a line. I want it to kind of blend into whatever lippy I'm going to use on her a little. The lippy that I'm using is number 55 by Milani. It's a drugstore lippy. Milani has really good lippies, and the number is 55. And we start in the middle of her lips. Press. And we go over that lip liner just a little bit and kind of blend it. I'm using a lip brush. This is just an old lip brush from Coastal Scents. Lip brushes are really small. Morphe has some really good lip brushes as well. Press. After she presses, I kind of reinforce that line a little bit. So now I'm kind of laying the pencil down on her lip so I could get a blended look and not so much of a line. And then we're going to go in with gloss. None other than our FENTY. This is Fussy. And it's kind of like a pinkish nude. And we tap that right in the middle, on the top and the bottom. Press.
It smells so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these smell really good. And that is it for our neutral lip. And now we're going to spray some finishing spray. I use the Scandinavia Oil Control. You can use the Urban Decay all-nighter, but I think this one works better. That's just me. Scandinavia Oil Control. Close your eye. And 2 sprays is all you need because it controls oil. You can order this online or in a costume store.
Yo.
Zoom in and get her look.
Got it. Yeah. This one's for all my pretty savage bitches that's belt they bread. Call me Ace, I got the connect. Yeah. I'm pretty savage. If I want it, I got